It was a hot afternoon, the kind that makes the pavement shimmer and the sun feel like it's pressing down on your shoulders. I was walking home from work, tired, frustrated, and honestly, just done with the day. But then I saw something that made me stop. A little girl was sitting alone at a tiny lemonade stand on the corner. Her sign was hand-drawn and shaky. Lemonade for my chemo, $1. She couldn't have been older than 9. She wore a baseball cap even though there was no shade. A scarf peeked out from under it, the kind you wear when you've lost your hair. She was smiling at every person who passed, but no one stopped, not even one. I crossed the street. She looked up at me with the brightest eyes, even though you could tell her body was tired. "Hi, sir," she said softly. "Would you like some lemonade? It's only $1. My mom says I make it really good." I asked her name. "Ava," she said. I bought a cup. It was warm, overly sweet, and full of lemon pulp, but in that moment it tasted better than anything I'd had all week. When I asked about the sign, her smile faded for just a second. "I have cancer," she whispered, as if it was a secret she wasn't supposed to say out loud. "My mom lost her job. She says we might not have enough money for my medicine. But I'm helping." Before I could respond, she looked up suddenly, eyes wide. A black motorcycle had pulled up near the curb. A man in a black helmet stepped off. She gasped. I turned around. It was Keanu Reeves. And then, something happened that I'll never forget. The sun was burning down on the cracked pavement when I saw her, barely 9 years old, sitting alone under a faded umbrella, selling lemonade with a hand-painted sign that broke my heart. "Help me fight cancer, lemonade $1. I didn't plan to stop. I was just walking home from another failed job interview, head full of problems. But something about her pulled me in. Her tiny hands shook as she poured lemonade, her face pale under a baseball cap that hid more than just her hair loss. "Hi, sir," she said with a tired smile. "I'm Ava. I make really good lemonade." I handed her $1 and asked why she was out here alone. She hesitated, looked away, and then whispered, "Chemo costs money. My mom, she's trying, but we don't have enough." And then her eyes flicked toward the street. A motorcycle rolled up, sleek and black. The man who stepped off didn't just turn heads, he silenced the whole block. The little girl's cup dropped from her hand. I turned, confused. Standing in front of us was Keanu Reeves. And what he did next left everyone speechless. Keanu didn't say a word at first. He just looked at Ava, then at the sign on her table, and something in his face changed. It wasn't pity. It was pain, like her struggle hit something deep inside him. People on the street started whispering, pulling out their phones, but he ignored them all. He knelt down right in front of her and said, "Is this your stand?" Ava nodded slowly, her voice trembling. "I'm trying to help my mom pay for my chemo." Keanu looked stunned. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick roll of cash, the kind you don't just carry for no reason. Without saying anything dramatic, he peeled off 10 $100 bills and placed them on the table. The crowd gasped. Ava's eyes went wide like she didn't believe it was real. But what really got me, and everyone else watching, wasn't the money. It was what he did after. He bought a cup of her lemonade, took a sip, smiled, and said, "You just made my day better, Ava." But the moment wasn't over yet. From across the street, a woman came running toward us, her face pale with panic. "Ava!" she screamed. "Are you okay?" That's when I realized something was wrong, not just with Ava, but with what her mother was hiding. Ava's mother, breathless and terrified, pushed through the small crowd forming around the stand. Her eyes locked on Keanu Reeves for a split second, but she didn't care who he was. Her entire focus was on her daughter. "Ava, you can't just leave like that. I told you to wait at the shelter." She stopped mid-sentence when she saw the stack of $100 bills sitting on the table. Her hands shook. Keanu stood up slowly and said in the calmest voice I've ever heard, "Your daughter's brave, and she's helping in the only way she knows how." Her mother's face crumpled. "I didn't want her to know how bad it's gotten," she whispered, almost ashamed. "I thought I could protect her from the truth a little longer." She looked down at Ava, who was gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Baby, you weren't supposed to know about the eviction notice yet. That hit hard. Everyone around went silent. Ava's eyes filled with tears, but she stayed strong. I just wanted to help, Mom. You cry at night when you think I'm asleep. The mother broke down right there, crouching beside her daughter, hugging her tightly. Keanu stepped back, giving them space, but I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't done yet. Then he turned to me. Hey, he said. You live around here? I nodded, unsure why he was asking. Good, he replied. Stick around. I have an idea, but we're going to need a little help. I didn't know what he meant, but there was something in his voice like a storm was about to roll in. He pulled out his phone, tapped something, and said just one word into it. Now. Within minutes, things started happening no one expected. As I handed Ava another glass of lemonade, I noticed a shadow behind her stall. A tall man in a hoodie stood silently, watching her with unsettling focus. At first, I thought it might be another kind-hearted stranger like Keanu, but then I caught a glimpse of something metallic inside his jacket. It looked like a syringe. I quickly stepped in front of Ava and asked the man if he needed help, but he turned away without a word and vanished into the crowd. Keanu, who had gone to get water, returned just as the man disappeared and noticed the panic on my face. I told him everything. Keanu's calm expression turned deadly serious. He whispered, "You need to stay with her at all times. That man isn't here for lemonade." Then, without a second thought, Keanu pulled out his phone and made a call. "I want surveillance on Ava now," he said. Within 15 minutes, a black SUV pulled up nearby and parked as if randomly. But I could tell this wasn't just protection. Something bigger was happening. Ava's mom returned from the pharmacy and noticed how tense we all were. "What's going on?" she asked. Keanu gently took her aside and explained what we saw. Her face went pale, and she held Ava close. That night, Ava insisted on staying at her lemonade stall until sunset, even though we all told her to rest. "If I don't sell, how will I pay for my next chemo?" she said. Keanu knelt down and said softly, "What if I told you your lemonade already saved more lives than you think?" Ava looked confused. That's when Keanu opened his wallet and pulled out a folded note. It was a letter from a girl named Sarah, who had undergone chemo at the same hospital. The note said, "Ava's story gave me strength to keep going. Please find her." My heart dropped. Who was Sarah? And why did it feel like this wasn't just about lemonade anymore? The moment Keanu read Sarah's letter again, his eyes narrowed with concern. "I met this girl 2 months ago at a cancer fundraiser," he said. "She was scared just like Ava. But now this letter, it feels like a cry for help." Ava clutched the note tightly and whispered, "What if she's in trouble?" Keanu stood up and told me to come with him. We left Ava with his security team and drove straight to the hospital where Sarah had last been seen, St. Clair Medical. But when we asked about her, the nurse at the reception looked nervous. "Sarah who?" she asked, flipping through files without even checking the system. I could see her hands shaking. Keanu leaned in and said, "We know she was transferred. Tell us where." The nurse whispered, "I can't talk here," and slipped a tiny paper into Keanu's hand. It had an address and a warning. "They're watching." We walked out quickly, and once inside the car, Keanu opened the note. The address wasn't another hospital. It was a private clinic on the outskirts of town. "Why would a chemo patient be sent there?" I asked. Keanu shook his head. "She wasn't sent for treatment, she was taken." At that moment, Ava's mother called, panicking. "A man just came by asking for Ava. He said he was from the hospital but had no ID. When I asked questions, he ran." I looked at Keanu. This wasn't just about Ava's lemonade anymore. Something darker was hiding behind this whole thing. Keanu tightened his grip on the steering wheel and said, "They're not just after Ava's money, they're after her." Without wasting a second, Keanu drove straight to the address on the paper. The city lights faded as we entered a silent industrial area. The building at the address looked like an abandoned warehouse, but inside, there was a clinic logo, Cura Lab, Wellness Center. It didn't feel right. The glass doors opened with a quiet hiss and a woman at the front. Desk greeted us too calmly. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. Keanu showed her Sarah's picture. "She was transferred here from St. Clair Medical," he said firmly. The woman paused for a second, then said, "I'll check," and walked into a hallway but never returned. 10 minutes passed. Keanu motioned to me and we followed. The hallway led to a locked metal door with a keypad. Keanu called someone and within seconds received a code. As he entered it, the door clicked open, revealing a cold clinical room with metal beds and medical tools. But what shocked me most was the whiteboard on the wall. It had children's names: Ava, Sarah, 2 others. Each name had something written. Beside it, Type A responded, Type B failed. Monitor closely. Keanu stared in disbelief. "This isn't treatment, it's testing." Suddenly, a voice from behind startled us. "You shouldn't be here." We turned to see a man in a lab coat with 2 guards behind him holding stun batons. "Leave now or it won't end well," he said. I stepped in front of Keanu, my heart racing, and said, "What are you doing with those kids?" He smiled, coldly, changing the future, starting with Ava. I felt like the air had been punched out of me. They didn't want Ava for charity. They wanted her for something terrifying. Keanu stepped forward calmly, but I could see the fire in his eyes. "You're not laying a finger on that girl," he said, voice sharp as a blade. The man in the lab coat smirked. "You think being famous scares us? You've walked into something much bigger than a movie set." In one swift move, the guards rushed at us. Keanu grabbed a tray and knocked one of them off balance. I ducked just as the second swung his baton, and Keanu hit him hard with a metal stool. Within seconds, both guards were on the floor. But the ET doctor had already pressed a red button. Loud alarms echoed through the building. "Go!" Keanu shouted. We ran back through the hallway and burst out of the clinic only to find 2 black cars speeding toward us. Just when I thought it was over, Keanu's security SUV screeched around the corner. The doors flung open, and we jumped in. "Drive!" Keanu yelled. As we sped off, Keanu turned to his team. "We need every record from that clinic. If they're testing kids, we're exposing them." I couldn't stop shaking. "Why Ava? Why now?" I asked. Keanu looked at me and said, "Because she's unique. Her chemo response is off the charts. That's why she's surviving when others aren't. And they want that secret." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a random story anymore. Ava was at the center of something evil. But as we returned to the lemonade stand, we were met with the last thing we expected. Ava was gone. Her chair was tipped over, her lemonade cart was spilled, and in the dirt near the stall there was one thing left behind. The same silver syringe I had seen in the stranger's jacket days earlier. I froze as Keanu picked up the syringe, his hand trembling slightly. "They took her," he whispered, eyes scanning the area. I couldn't speak. The street was quiet, too quiet. It felt like the world had stopped moving. We searched the nearby shops and shouted Ava's name, but there was no answer. One store owner said, "A man in a black hoodie pushed her into a van. She screamed your name." That sentence shattered something inside me. Keanu pulled out his phone and called someone high up, someone in cyber intelligence. Within minutes, security camera feeds were streaming into our car. We spotted the black van turning into a hidden road behind an old train yard. "That's their second base," Keanu said grimly. "They didn't expect us to come this far." We drove like mad, cutting through traffic, every second heavier than the last. When we reached the train yard, it was deserted, but the van was still there, its back door hanging open. Keanu rushed forward and found Ava's jacket on the ground, torn. A trail of small blood drops led into the warehouse. I didn't want to go in. I was scared. But Keanu looked at me and said, "She believes in us. That's why she left the note." We pushed open the heavy warehouse door and entered a dark space filled with strange equipment. IV bags, computers, and samples, labeled by numbers. And then we heard it, a soft cough. We ran toward the sound and found Ava locked inside a glass chamber, barely awake, wires connected to her arms. I yelled her name and slammed my fists on the glass. Her lips moved slowly. They said I'm special. They want to copy me. Keanu turned to me, his voice shaking with rage. They're harvesting her immune system. They're trying to sell her cure. Keanu smashed the emergency release lever on the chamber, sparks flying as the glass slid open. I rushed to Ava, gently, pulling the wires from her arms as she whimpered in pain. "You're safe now," I whispered, but her skin was ice cold and her lips were pale. "They took my blood so many times," she said weakly. "I thought I was going to disappear." Keanu picked her up in his arms, face tight with fury. But before we could leave, a door at the back creaked open, and the same doctor stepped in, flanked by 2 more guards. Only this time they had real weapons. "You think you can steal her back?" the doctor growled. Keanu didn't flinch. "She's not yours. She's a child fighting for her life, not some experiment." The doctor raised a remote. "You don't understand what her blood can do. She's the key to a new generation of medicine. With her, we can cure billions." I stepped in, holding Ava's trembling hand. "And how many kids have you hurt chasing that cure?" For a moment, he hesitated. Then, before he could react, a flash grenade burst through the window. Keanu's security team had arrived, armed and trained. Within seconds, the guards were disarmed and the doctor restrained. But Ava suddenly gasped, her body going limp in Keanu's arms. "She's crashing," someone shouted. We sprinted out, racing to the SUV where a medic was waiting. "Her system's shutting down. Too much blood loss," the medic said. Keanu gritted his teeth, pulled out a vial from his jacket pocket and handed it over. "Use this. It's the sample we stole earlier. It's her own recovered plasma. They won't get to use it, but we will." As the medic injected the vial, I held my breath. Ava's heart monitor was flat. Then a flicker, then a beat. Her little chest rose. Again. Keanu exhaled and looked at me. "She's not done yet. And neither are we." 3 weeks later, the world knew Ava's name. Her story had gone viral. How a little girl selling lemonade to pay for her chemo was nearly kidnapped by a secret medical group, and how Keanu Reeves risked everything to save her. We stood at her lemonade stand again, but this time she wasn't weak or pale. She smiled brightly, with color back in her cheeks and a fresh bandage on her arm where her final chemo session had just ended. Keanu stood beside us, sunglasses on, handing out cups of lemonade while people from across the city lined up just to meet Ava. News crews arrived, but Ava didn't care about the cameras. She whispered to me, "I just want to live and help other kids too." Keanu nodded and said, "That's why we started a foundation under her name, to make sure no child has to beg for treatment again." He looked at me, serious now. "This isn't just a happy ending. This is the beginning of something bigger." I smiled, knowing he was right. From the ashes of her pain, Ava had become a symbol of strength, love, and hope. And as she poured lemonade for a little boy who had just started his own cancer journey, I realized that heroes aren't always the ones in capes. Sometimes they're little girls with paper signs and the courage to fight. Sometimes they're actors who step into real-life battles. And sometimes they're just people like you and me, who care enough to act. Please subscribe channel for Keanu Reeves respect. Thanks.